Alarms scream through the hull and I am already running before I understand why. Sparks fall from a broken panel above my head. The floor tilts under my boots as the ship takes another hit, and somewhere behind me a voice shouts my name. Ethan, get to the core room, now. That is Grace, my systems officer, and her voice is shaking. I do not stop to ask questions. I turn down the burning corridor and push forward, my chest tight, my mind racing faster than my legs can carry me. 3 days ago, our small fleet stood between Earth and an armada that stretched across the sky like a wall of steel. 200 enemy ships came out of the dark without warning. We had maybe 30. It should have been over in minutes. Somehow, it was not. I reach the core room and slam my palm against the access panel. The door groans open, revealing a chamber filled with pulsing blue light. This is the heart of the enemy flagship, the very ship I boarded 20 minutes ago with 4 other soldiers. Now, I am the only one left standing. I do not let myself think about that, not yet. The reactor lock sits in the center of the room, a tall cylinder wrapped in cables thicker than my arm. If I do not disable it, this ship and its entire fleet will jump straight into orbit above my home planet within the hour. Every city, every person I have ever known will be within reach of weapons I cannot even imagine. My hands move on instinct, cutting through the outer casing with the small plasma torch strapped to my belt. Sparks fly into my face. I ignore the heat. Behind me, heavy footsteps echo through the corridor, growing louder, closer. I have maybe 90 seconds before they reach me. The wires inside the lock are arranged in a pattern I do not recognize, nothing like our own technology. I force myself to breathe slowly and study the shapes, the colors, the way the light pulses through each strand. There has to be a rhythm to it. Everything built by a mind, any mind, follows some kind of rhythm. There it is, a weak point, a single connector glowing faint yellow instead of blue. I do not know why I trust my instinct, but there is no time to doubt myself. I press the torch against it and pull the connector free. The chamber shudders. Lights along the walls flicker and die, one after another, like a wave rolling away into darkness. The reactor lock powers down with a heavy click that I feel in my bones. I have done it. The jump drive is dead. Before I can feel any relief, the door behind me bursts open, and I am staring at 4 creatures taller than any human I have ever stood beside. Gray armored plates cover their bodies, and their eyes glow faint orange in the low light. I raise my hands, empty, showing I carry no weapon. They do not kill me on the spot, which surprises me more than anything else that has happened today. Instead, they surround me and march me through corridors lit by dim red emergency lights, past broken doors and silent rooms, until we reach what I can only guess is the command deck. It is enormous, filled with strange instruments and screens showing star charts I cannot read. At the center of it all stands a figure taller than the rest, with 4 arms folded across a chest plated in dark armor, watching me the way a person might watch a storm they did not expect to survive. He speaks, and a small device on his shoulder translates his words into English a half-second later. You are the one who broke my reactor lock. It is not a question. I say nothing. 4 of your kind entered my ship tonight. 3 did not survive the attempt. You did. And in doing so, you have cost me my fleet's advance, my timetable, and no small measure of my pride. I keep my hands raised and my eyes steady. Showing fear here feels like it would be a mistake. My name is Threxil Vann, he continues, commander of this vessel and of the fleet you have just crippled. Do you have a name, small warrior? Ethan, I say. My voice comes out steadier than I expected. Ethan Cole. Something in his expression shifts, though I cannot read alien faces well enough to name the emotion. He studies me for a long moment, and the silence stretches until it feels heavier than the fighting outside. There is an old law among my people, he finally says, older than this empire itself. When a warrior wounds a commander so deeply and still lives to stand before him, that warrior earns what we call a boon. One reward, named by the warrior himself, and granted without question, so long as it does not demand my own death or the death of my crew. I stare at him, waiting for the trick, the trap hidden somewhere in his words. You are offering me a reward, I say slowly, for disabling your ship. I am bound by honor to offer it, he says, whether I wish to or not. Around us, the bridge crew has gone completely still. Not one of them moves. I get the sense that whatever is happening right now has never happened on this ship before, perhaps never in this fleet. Any reward, Threxil says again. Gold, a vessel of your own, the freedom of every prisoner taken from your world today. Name it, small warrior, and I will grant it, or I forfeit my honor before my own people. My mind spins through every possibility in seconds. Freedom for the crew captured earlier in this attack, weapons for Earth's defense, the location of the Dominion homeworld, information that could change the entire war. Any general back home would tell me to ask for something that saves lives immediately, something with numbers attached to it. But I think of something else. I think of every alien species I have read about in the reports our intelligence teams gathered before this war began. Species that live under Dominion rule not because they were destroyed, but because they were convinced, generation after generation, that being conquered was somehow a gift. I want to see the truth, I say. Threxil tilts his head. Explain. Your history records a campaign against a world called Vescarin, 400 years ago. Your schools teach it as a peaceful joining of two peoples. I want the real records, not the version written for children. I want to know what actually happened there. The silence that follows is different from before. It is not confusion. It is something closer to shock rippling through every creature on that bridge. You could ask for an empire's ransom, Threxil says slowly, and you ask for old paperwork. I ask for the truth, I answer, because everything else you could give me can be taken away again. Gold runs out. A ship gets destroyed. Prisoners can be recaptured next season if your empire decides to try again. But once the truth is known, once it spreads to every world under your banner, you cannot put it back where it came from. Threxil says nothing for a long moment. His 4 eyes study me as though he is trying to solve a puzzle that has no clear shape yet. Why, he finally asks, and his voice has lost its edge of command. Would a soldier who just saved his entire planet spend his one reward on history rather than survival? Because history is what keeps wars going, I tell him. Your empire tells every world it conquers that the conquest was righteous. That belief is what keeps them quiet. It keeps them from asking questions. If I take that belief away, even from one campaign, even from one world, I am not just winning today, I am making tomorrow harder for you. For a moment I think he might refuse. I think he might decide that honor only stretches so far. But then he straightens, and something in his posture changes, like a weight has settled into place rather than lifted away. You have named your boon, he says. I will grant it. I am taken to a holding room after that. Not a cell exactly, though the door only opens from the outside. I do not know what happens to the rest of my crew, and for 2 days I do not sleep, worrying about Grace and the others who boarded with me. On the 3rd day, the door opens, and Threxil himself steps inside, carrying a small data crystal in one of his 4 hands. The Vescarin logs, he says, placing it on the table between us, unedited, as you asked. I take the crystal with hands that are not quite steady. There is more, he adds. My analysts, curious about your request, searched deeper than the boon required. They found records from 11 other campaigns, each one taught to my people as a peaceful joining. Each one, when you examine the original files, something far less peaceful. I look up at him. Why would you give me more than what I asked for? He is quiet for a moment, his 4 eyes fixed somewhere past me, as though looking at something only he can see. Because in 17 campaigns, he says, no prisoner has ever asked me for truth instead of gold. I find myself wondering what kind of species raises a warrior who thinks that way. I am released 3 weeks later, along with the surviving members of my boarding crew, including Grace, who greets me with a hug so tight it nearly cracks a rib that was already bruised. The Dominion fleet withdraws from Earth's system, its jump drive still crippled, its commander choosing, for reasons I still do not fully understand, to honor an old law rather than simply erase the inconvenience I represent. But my part in this story is only beginning. Back on Earth, I do not go home right away. I go to the research station orbiting Mars, where a team led by a linguist named Olivia has spent the war learning to read Dominion script faster than anyone thought possible. Together, we open the data crystal, and what spills out changes everything I thought I understood about this war. Vescarin was not joined peacefully. The original records describe a world that fought for years before its resistance was finally worn down, not through negotiation, but through pressure so constant and so total that surrender became the only path left. The Empire's official history erased every year of that resistance and replaced it with a single, tidy sentence about welcome and unity. The other 11 campaigns follow the same pattern. Different worlds, different circumstances, the same quiet erasing of struggle, replaced with stories of gratitude and peace. This is enormous, Olivia says, staring at the translated files glowing on her screen. If this reaches the client worlds, the ones still loyal to the Empire, they will have to ask themselves what else they were never told. That is exactly why I asked for it, I tell her. We do not release the files carelessly. A young engineer named Marcus, who has spent the war studying Dominion communication networks, finds a way to place the records onto their own subspace relay, the very network the Empire uses to spread its official history to every world under its control. It takes him nearly a month of careful, patient work, testing and adjusting, making certain the files will not simply be deleted the moment they appear. When the broadcast finally goes out, it does not happen all at once. It spreads slowly, world by world, like water finding cracks in a wall that no one realized was already weak. Reports come back to us through channels I did not even know existed, describing gatherings on client worlds, questions being asked in public squares that had never been asked before, officials scrambling to explain records that suddenly do not match the stories everyone grew up believing. 3 border systems file formal complaints with the Dominion's ruling council within the first 2 months. I do not know exactly what those complaints demand, but I know that a government built on a story of universal gratitude cannot easily survive when that story stops being believed by even a fraction of the people who once accepted it without question. Grace finds me one evening on the observation deck of our station, watching Earth turn slowly below us, blue and quiet and unaware of how close it came to catastrophe. "You could have asked for their surrender," she says, standing beside me. "You could have ended the war in that one moment." "Maybe," I say. "But wars end in a lot of ways. Some end with one side beaten so badly it cannot fight anymore. Those wars start again eventually, once the losing side rebuilds. I did not want that kind of ending." "And this kind of ending?" I think about it for a long moment before answering. "This kind of ending does not need a second war," I say. "It just needs enough people asking questions that the Empire cannot keep answering with silence." In the months after the broadcast, I meet people I never expected to cross paths with, survivors from client worlds who somehow found their way to neutral stations near our border, carrying stories of their own. One of them is a trader named Priya, who tells me her grandmother used to sing songs about the joining of her world with the Empire, songs written to sound like celebration. After the record spread, Priya's grandmother stopped singing them. She said she finally understood why the melody always sounded, to her ear, a little too much like mourning dressed up as joy. Another is a young mechanic named Felix, who grew up on a world so distant from Earth that he had never even heard of humans until the broadcast reached his settlement. He tells me the records changed nothing about his daily life, not at first, but they changed the questions people around him were willing to ask out loud. Small questions, at first. Why does the council never let outside inspectors review the old archives? Why do certain records remain sealed for reasons no official will explain? Small questions have a way of growing louder once people realize they are allowed to ask them. I carry these conversations with me long after they end, turning them over in my mind the way I once turned over the wiring inside that reactor lock, searching for the pattern underneath. A year passes, and Earth begins to rebuild what the invasion damaged, though the deeper scars, the ones in people's memories, will take much longer to heal. I return to active duty for a while, though the fighting along our border grows quieter with each passing month, as though the Dominion has other, larger problems to worry about now. It is during this quiet season that I receive an unexpected message, routed through channels that should not exist between our two governments. It is from Threxil Vann. He requests a meeting, unarmed, on a neutral station near the edge of contested space. Command is nervous about the idea, but curiosity wins out over caution, and eventually I am given permission to go, accompanied only by Grace, who insists she is not letting me walk into anything alone again. The station is small, quiet, run by a neutral trading company that has learned to stay out of larger conflicts. Threxil is waiting in a private room when we arrive, seated at a table too small for his frame, looking older somehow, though I could not say what has changed about him exactly. "You look surprised to see me still breathing," he says, and something in his tone suggests this might be his version of humor. "I heard you were demoted," I admit, taking the seat across from him, "and exiled, for a while." "Both true. My superiors were not pleased when the records I handed you found their way onto our own networks. They accused me of treason. It took nearly a year, and a change in leadership, before I was allowed back into any position of authority." "I am sorry," I say, and I mean it, though I am not entirely sure why. He chose to honor his own law. That choice cost him more than I ever fully understood while I sat in that holding room, worrying only about myself and my crew. "Do not be," he says. "The new leadership owes its position to the very unrest your broadcast created. 3 systems that once accepted our history without question now demand real representation in how they are governed. My people are having conversations we have not had in centuries. I did not expect that outcome when I offered you a boon on that bridge. I expected you to ask for gold, or a ship, or the freedom of your crew. and I expected to grant it and move on with the war. I almost did ask for the crew, I admit. It would have been simpler. Simpler, Threxil agrees, but smaller. My emperor, the new one, tells the story of that day often, not as a warning, but as a lesson to young commanders. He says never underestimate a species that chooses truth when it could have chosen everything else, because that species already understands something an empire built on old lies spends centuries trying to forget. Grace, quiet until now, finally speaks. What happens next? Between our people, I mean. Threxil considers the question carefully before answering. I do not know. Old habits do not die quickly, even when the stories that support them begin to crumble. There will be those among my people who want war again, who believe truth is a weakness to be punished rather than a debt to be paid. But there will also be those, more than there once were, who believe something different is possible. And you? I ask. Which one are you? He is quiet for a long moment, his 4 eyes fixed on some point beyond the small room we sit in, beyond even the station itself. I fought 17 campaigns believing I was bringing order to a chaotic sky, he says finally. I burned worlds and called it necessary. I told myself the stories my empire taught me, the same way every soldier tells himself the story that lets him sleep at night. Then a small, soft creature stood in front of me, with nothing but a plasma torch and a request for honesty. And for the first time in longer than I care to admit, I asked myself whether the stories I believed were even true. He looks at me directly now, and there is something almost gentle in his expression, something I would not have believed an alien face could hold. You did not just win a boon that day, Ethan Cole. You started a question that an entire empire is still trying to answer. I intend to keep asking it, for whatever years I have left. We do not solve everything in that small room on a neutral station. The war between our peoples does not end with a single conversation, and the deeper changes within the Dominion take years I will not fully witness. But something shifts that day, something that continues to shift long after Grace and I leave that station and return to the quiet blue world we nearly lost. Sometimes the most powerful thing a person can ask for is not the thing that ends a fight today. It is the thing that makes the next fight harder to start, and the one after that, until eventually, the people who once believed war was simply the price of order begin to wonder whether there might have been another way all along. I think about that often, especially on quiet nights when Earth turns slowly beneath the stars, unaware of how close it came, and how far a single choice, made in a burning corridor with 90 seconds on the clock, managed to carry us. Threxil Vann once told me that stories are the most dangerous weapon any empire possesses, because they can convince a person to accept almost anything, so long as the story is told with enough confidence and repeated for long enough. I have come to believe he was right about that. But I have also come to believe that truth, once released into the world, becomes a story of its own, one that no empire, however old or however powerful, can ever fully take back. And that, more than any weapon, more than any fleet, is the reward I chose that day, and the reward I would choose again, without a single moment of hesitation.